Sonia, are we ready? Okay. Let's go ahead and bring into order our Truckee Meadows Water Authority meeting for Wednesday, February 21st, 2024. And if we could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Reese, would you like to lead us, sir?
Please join me in our salute to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Very good. Can we go ahead and check on a quorum? Roll call.
Anderson?
I think he's on Zoom. Paul, you there?
Yeah, I'm here. I did not hear my name, but I'm here.
What did he say? We can hear you almost.
Yes. Andriola?
I am here.
Thank you.
Present.
Breckus?
I'm here.
Dare?
Here.
Buer?
Here.
Hill? Reese?
Here.
Zimmerman? Here. Amelia?
Here.
And Horn? Here.
Very good. Moving on to 3. Do we have any public comment today?
None at this time.
Anybody in the audience would like to speak, sing, dance? Okay. Very good. We'll move forward to possible board comments or acknowledgements. Anybody? Anybody? Very good. Moving on to the approval of the agenda. Do we have anybody has a question or anything on the agenda, or do I see a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
I have a first and a second, and I'm going to say Clara beat you just by a hair.
It's fine.
But there'll be more opportunities, I promise.
I know with her will.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Let's continue on. Approval of the minutes of the January 18th, 2024 meeting of the TMWA Board of Directors. And this is looking for possible action.
Motion to approve.
We have a first.
Second.
I have a second. Any more discussion? Seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Moving on to a fun conversation. Bill Hauk, water supply update. Tanya, whenever it rains, I'm wondering what you're going to tell me.
So yeah, I do have good news. You know, and I know a couple of these first slides are kind of redundant, but they are updated. But this is the message, you know, really. Last year's record snowpack filled all of our upstream rivers. We carried much of that water into this year, which really is a hedge against drought for the Water Authority. First couple weeks of February were kind of dry down here. You can see on the drought monitor, which is updated every week, we do have some yellow now showing in northern Nevada, abnormally dry. But the storms we got over the last week, I think will erase that. And next time this comes out, it should be almost colorless once again. Pretty good storms over the last week, as everyone knows. Donner Lake, over the last week, saw about 3 inches of water added to the snowpack, and that's pretty low elevation. That's only 5,900 feet. So good things have happened over the last week. And snowpack, as of this morning, is still 77% of median, which is not bad considering where we were to start the year. We started the year at like 45% of normal or median. So things keep improving. We continue to get storms. They're just not the bigger storms that we really need to bring us back on track. But precip for the year is actually in better shape at 81% of normal or median right now. So all in all, things aren't that bad. The black line indicates that. You can see where we are as of Monday morning, Tuesday morning, water count into the snowpack in the black line. So you can see we're still, behind normal, and, we are way behind, where we were this time last year, but that was an anomaly. So what's going to happen from here? April 1st, are we going to go down? Will this year go down in the books as a below normal year? I don't know. We could see a miracle March, much like we did in 2009. And these 3 years, 09, 21, and 94, I put those here for reference because basically starting water content of the snowpack at the same level. So we could see a miracle March, great end of February like we did in 09, end the year with an average snowpack. We could continue to get what I'll call these smaller maintenance type storms and kind of maintain the snowpack that's up there and end up the season somewhere around 80% of average like we did in 2021. Or we could get much of nothing, like we did in 1994, and end the year on a sour note. At this point, it's really still too early to tell. But regardless, here's a hydrograph of Lake Tahoe showing actual and projected elevations through the end of this year. Based on the early February forecasts, Tahoe was expected to come within a half a foot from filling. Okay, so conditions have improved since then. Tahoe right now, it's only 1.5 feet from full. The runoff season hasn't even started yet. The gates closed rise at Tahoe was for 0.9 feet, back then on the first of the month. So we're in a good spot. Things are good. Same with the river flow forecast for the Truckee River. Normal flows the rest of this year. And I would venture to say if we end this year, 80% of normal, I'd venture to go out on a limb and say we probably have normal flows at least the next 2 years. So weather forecast, just looking out, next 7 days. In fact, I've looked at the models, the next 10 days. There's more of these kind of maintenance type storms coming our way. They'll maintain what we have up there. We're not really going to add anything to the snowpack or gain on the percent of median, but it's enough to maintain what we have. But I don't see anything really big, significant coming over the next 10 days. But, I think the message is a positive one. Again, the first 3 points here, you're all well aware. Record snowpack last year, ended the 3-year drought. All reservoirs filled and spilled last year. Much of that storage was carried over into this winter, probably about as much as we legally could. An average winter this year means Tahoe will fill. It'll completely fill. It might even spill if we end up, average by April 1st. On April 1st, on February 1st, when conditions weren't even as good as they are now, we were still projecting within 0.5 feet from fill. So we have started out slowly. We haven't quite got up to the curve as far as snowpack building is concerned. But, in the last couple weeks, conditions have improved noticeably, and the forecast has also improved. Normal flows on the Truckee are projected rest of this year and probably through 2025 as well. And we are well positioned, from a water supply perspective, and it'll be normal operations for us once again in 2024 and beyond.
That's awesome. Let the record show, Ms. Alexis Hill has joined us. Thank you. Good to see you. Any questions for Bill? I know that's good news. I think we understand most of it, but anything anybody wants to extrapolate on, or?
I'll ask a question.
Sure.
If I may. You mentioned that, were you saying that prior to now, we're looking at rising to 1 foot below the rim or the dam? And now that's changed? Could you just?
So the runoff forecast put out by the NRCS based on February 1st snowpack conditions showed a 0.9 foot rise between April and full. So we're only 1.5 feet from full right now.
Oh, 1.5 feet.
And conditions have improved since then, so I would imagine the projected rise is over 1 foot now. 1 foot, 1.
So you at the end will still be below the top of the dam, or?
Based on the most recent runoff projections, it still shows we'll be slightly less than full, but still
Okay.
in
Yeah,
really good
close to
shape.
full.
Yeah, still.
Okay, but I just wanted to clarify, I wasn't totally clear on that. Okay, thanks.
But we could get a miracle March, and I've seen awesome Aprils too, and we could totally turn this thing on, and end up way over average. We just don't know.
Oh, good job. Well, we do believe in miracles, but we do plan correctly, so both of them are good. So thank you so much. Welcome. Appreciate it. Let's go ahead and move on. Presentation of Truckee River Fund activities for calendar year 2023. Ms. Sonia Folsom and Cara Steeland. It's a race. Who's going to win? Dun-dun. You can come up. Come on. There's 2 microphones.
Good morning, Board. Sonia Folsom for the record, and Cara Steeland for the record. Before you, you have the calendar year 2023 Truckee River Fund project activities. We bring this to you at the end of the year or the beginning of the next calendar year to give you that summary of the projects that were approved by the advisory committee. I have Lauren Renda, who's the philanthropic advisor at Community Foundation of Northern Nevada, if you had more specific questions about the program. Since its inception in 2004, the advisory committee has approved 212 projects a total of $16.1 million in resolution funding, and a total of $26.1 million in match. So you can see how the committee leverages the funds that TMWA donates for the projects that they approve. Last year, the board asked for expenses, how that's administered and calculated. The Community Foundation has included a memo to the staff report that they charge 1.5% for the first $1 million of funding that they manage, and then it's reduced incrementally depending on how much more funding is in the program. Our funding is never more than $1 million, so it's always 1.5% of that amount. So last year, the fund expenses, which is the court minute taker, court's too official, but the minute taker and the web security advisor is just over $4,000, and Ms. Renda's and staff at the Community Foundation is just over $21,000 for administration fees. And we have a young environmentalist who likes to donate to the Truckee River Fund every month, about $10. So they have been doing that for just over a year, 2 years or so. And the attachment 3 will show you the last 5 years of the projects that have been funded, those that have not, and their status, whether they've been completed or not. And to Chair's question about those that have not been funded, in last year there were 10 that were approved between the spring and fall RFP cycles, and 4 that were not. And the 4 that weren't were either outside of the Truckee River Fund scope or in the Tahoe Basin, which is typically something we don't fund. And with that, we'll take any questions.
Very good. Let's go and open it up. Any thoughts, questions? To remind you, anything new that's coming, you will get that in a few months. This is just what has happened.
Correct.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, just real quickly, Chair Dare, John Enlow always reminds us that the Truckee River Fund actually started or gave money to what turned out to be the Tahoe Boat Inspection and Aquatic Invasive Species Program. And so it just shows you what this fund is able to do when you look at what that program up in Lake Tahoe is doing today.
Very good. Very good. You have anything you'd like to add?
I don't think so. I think Sonia covered it all.
Well, I want to just say one thing. I'm very grateful that TMWA, through the Truckee River Fund, as I understand it, donated money for the Portland Loos,
Yes.
right? Okay, because that, I was just talking to someone about it this morning, frankly, and talking about how difficult it was to start up that program. And for those that don't know, we're basically in process of putting 12 bathrooms along the river, with the idea that by providing bathrooms for people that are recreating along the river or visiting the river or even living on the river, that we would give them an option for going to the bathroom. And it was very hard to get it started. I started it in Reno, and it was our CFO who turned me on to this concept of these loos. But I would say it took about 5 years to get rolling, but between the One Truckee River and this river fund, that's the way that we were able to move it forward. It basically gave it an imprimatur that said this is important, water quality is important along the river. And it stands out in my mind as something over the last 10 years that, just as John said, what an important program, the boat inspection program to keep invasive species out of Tahoe and also the river. I think this too is a seminal program, and I'm just very grateful that we got there with this help. We would not have got there, in my opinion, without this help.
Mr. Reese?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For my part, I want to say thank you both to the fund for the work that they do in helping us to manage the dollars we have. These are the 2023 grants that have already essentially, for example, the Lake Park project has already happened or is happening this spring. When will we see the next year's project application grant process open? And when would we anticipate being able to look at what is proposed for the next fiscal year?
So the Truckee River Fund had their spring proposal cycle in January. It closed at the beginning of February. The advisory committee had a meeting last Friday on February 16th to review the spring RFPs. We bring it to you for review for final recommendation in March.
Very cool. And any other questions or thoughts? Okay, that is, we're not voting on anything, we're just saying add a job, good job. So we are looking on to presentation of fiscal year 2024, quarter two, year-to-date financial results. Mr. Matt Bauman.
Okay, all right. Hello, members of the board. Matt Bowman, TMWA CFO for the record. In front of you is a staff report that's taking a look at the first 6 months of our fiscal year. That's July through December. It's fiscal year 2024. Same staff report that you're used to seeing. If you take a look at the front page, overall budget to actual change in net position or net income is up over budget $4.5 million, or about 14%. So some of the takeaways from what's going on in the first 6 months. TMWA received a grant for the AMI project. We've recognized nearly $7 million of that, of $9.5 million total grant, so that's in here. We have a pretty large fair value adjustment in investments of nearly $7 million. It's due to the rapid decrease in interest rates between October and December, so we have to recognize that in our investments. So that's a gain. And then it's an offset by lower operating income. So if you remember back to the first quarter, we had a pretty dismal revenue quarter due to lower water sales. And so that has continued, and that's offsetting those gains I've talked about. I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a second. Those are the key takeaways. If we go to the second page and we look at operating revenue, so water sales is lower by $4.6 million, or 7%, through the first 2 quarters of the fiscal year. And while that's a significant decrease, the second quarter was actually slightly better than the first, in that we were 8% lower after the first quarter, down to 7% lower. Not great, but we'll see where we end the year. If you remember the second half of last year wasn't great with all the precipitation we had late in the spring. We'll see what happens this year.
But we're not complaining.
Not complaining,
the
right?
rain or the
Exactly.
snow.
Exactly. There's always a positive there. Bright spot on the revenue side, the second line in that table is hydroelectric sales. So Ryan Dixon and the hydro team have been killing it this first half of the year. We're up about $400,000 above budget. They've really been doing a good job to keep the hydros running, and that obviously helps to offset that reduction in revenue. If we go to the next page, operating expenses, so this is where we're spending our money. No major surprises here. You can see in total we're $4.4 million lower than budget. Power costs have been higher than budget by about $600,000. However, NV Energy is reducing their base tariff adjustments starting January 1st by about 3%. So we should see some relief there, at least in the short term in the second half of the fiscal year. On the bright side, our chemical costs are lower by about $700,000 from budget, and that's due to a couple things. One is we've had less turbidity events in the fall. When the river gets stirred up, we have to treat it and use more chemicals. We have seen a reduction in price on chemicals as well, but also notably, our operating staff has done a really good job zeroing in on the efficiency of chemical usage, and so that's helped save, and that's the type of saving that we'll see going forward as well. So that was a focus of theirs following last year's when we really started to see some price increases in chemicals, and they've done a good job with that. If we look at the next page, this is non-operating expenses. A couple things to point out here. The first line is investment earnings. You can see we have a loss there, and this is due to the early sale of investments in order for us to do the cash optimization refinancing in December. And so we take a loss on the liquidation of those investments. However, that's going to be reinvested, and it'll actually end up being a benefit because we're reinvesting it at a higher rate. So over the long term, it will actually be a benefit. Because of that. The second line I mentioned at the onset, a large increase in the fair value of investments. So that's the value of our investments held because interest rates dropped. And so when we're holding investments at a higher value, we have to recognize that. That's $6.7 million gain there. As you can see, the last line, interest expense, is what is expected because all of our debt is fixed at this time. The next page is capital contributions. I mentioned grant revenue. You can see that on the first line, about $7 million. Nearly all of that is because of the AMI grant that we received through the Nevada Water Conservation Infrastructure Initiative. We were awarded $9.5 million, and so we'll recognize the additional $2.5 million over the next couple of quarters as that project progresses. And again, that's our AMI project where we're installing automated meters throughout the service territory. And if we go to the last page, I'll touch on cash position. So December 31st, at the end of the second quarter, we were lower than normal, and that was because of the cash optimization. We defeased debt in December and then issued new debt in January. So at the end of January, total cash is back up over $200 million, where we would expect it to normally remain. So again, takeaways, water revenues lower than budget, but we do have a recognition of the grant for the AMI project, and no big surprises on the operating expense side. So I'll take any questions.
Sure, Ms. Breckus.
Thank you. I'll start from the back, moving forward. On the last page, what's the Spring Creek South Zone conversion again? I can't remember that one.
You know what? I don't know. Call up Danny. He'll be able to give you the details on that.
Call a friend, phone a friend.
Yeah.
Yeah, Danny Rotter, Director of Engineering for the record. This was a project where at the interface of Old TMWA legacy and the interaction with the south end of the county system,
Good?
DWR system in Spanish Springs,
Okay.
Spring Creek.
Yeah,
The
okay.
south end of the Spring Creek system,
Okay.
the north end of the TMWA system. We're combining it for better redundancy, and then also we were able to abandon a pump station, so less energy over time.
Okay. I think I have some recollection of that one. And then, thank you for that. And then on page 5 of 8, the contributions from other governments. Is that what Reno's supposed to bring it over to the, are they, this, you can look at it from different ways, and I guess since we're TMWA, we look at it from TMWA's perspective. We budgeted $7 million that Reno was gonna contribute, and Reno is only brought in 1.8 so far. But that project's moving slower than budgeted, so does the agreement with Reno need to change? I mean, is there a default in terms of the timing and getting that over?
So that line item is a percentage of the project. So you mentioned the project is slower. It's progressing slower than what we had budgeted, and that's what that's reflecting. And so the Reno is paying in accordance with the agreement.
With the
on time.
timeline?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I guess that's fine. I'd rather see it sit in Reno's sewer fund than over here, frankly, because I have greater financial concerns about Reno than here. But I think it's just a conversation that should be had of, where we're at on that project. And then on 2 of 8, because it's been a long time since we've really talked about where that project's going and the milestones and stuff. On 2 of 8, the operating sales, I didn't capture that. It looks like those grew 58% on the top table, third line. I think you mentioned the hydro, but what happened on what were those other operating sales that came in?
Part of that is business inspection fees, and so when we are developers constructing something, our inspectors will go out and inspect that, and that's part of the fee that we collect there. That's part of it. That's higher than budget. But also we recognized in the quarter payments from City of Reno in relation to the water lease agreement that we have with them that we executed I think it was a year and a half or so ago, a return flow related agreement. And
okay. That was related to the pipeline out to Tri-Gid.
No, not related to the pipeline out to Tri-Gid. And
John can talk more about it, but it was in conjunction with the purchase agreement for TMWA to buy water rights from Vidler as well from the Fish Springs water, and then there was a return flow aspect that Reno had there.
Gosh, I need to remember that. Okay, well, thank you. Those are my questions.
Any other questions? Thank you. It is always fun to get into the mind of Matt Bowman and try to see all the things you think about. Thank you very much. I believe we are on this one. This is just a presentation, so we can move on. We are now moving on to 10, which is public hearing on rate and rule amendments. Rate amendment, second hearing, public hearing, discussion and possible action on resolution number 323. A resolution to adopt potential water rate adjustments, including possible multi-year adjustments with proposed initial implementation for the first billing cycle in June 2024. It's all yours, man.
Okay. Thank you. Matt Bowman, TMWA CFO for the record. So staff is recommending that the board adopt Resolution 323, which includes a series of rate increases, first of which would be effective this June 2024. The following rate increases will be brought back to the board for review and approval during the strategic planning meetings, which occur each October. So I've talked about this a lot over the last 6 months or so, but how did we get here? I want to recap. In August and September 2023, we brought several scenarios to the board for considerations. Those scenarios were developed in coordination with PFM, our financial advisors. And following these meetings, the board directed staff to move forward with a public process, which we did. That process included 4 open houses, along with physical and electronic mailings to customers. Then at the last board meeting in January, there was a first reading of the rate adjustment proposal. At that meeting, the board referred to the second reading, which is what we're talking about here. So much of what's in the staff report you've seen before, but I do want to recap it again. Because of rising costs in the operating of the system, mostly due to inflation, in order for TMWA to maintain their financial stability, which includes minimum debt service coverage ratios, minimum cash balances, and excellent financial credit ratings, we have proposed a series of rate increases over the next 3 years. Then, following that, as a measure of maintenance, we would make adjustments based on CPIU each year. But I want to emphasize that for those rate increases beyond 2024, so 2025, 2026, and beyond, including the CPIU rate increases, those would be brought to the board every fall for the board to review and assess the viability of those rate increases if they're needed. And just to give you a little historical perspective, over the last 7 years, staff has recommended and the board has approved that we defer rate increases that would have otherwise been scheduled to occur. And so it's not unprecedented for TMWA to come back and say, we don't need these rate increases. And so that the board will always have that ability.
Can I say it this way? Because I think it's important, because we've had a lot of conversation about this on this board. It's a guide for you guys, but we get to look at it as a brand new look. So I just think it's important as a board we remember that. All it is a guide for you.
Yep.
And for our customers. They understand we are not just following a CPU and we're like, oh, let's raise it, let's raise it, let's raise it. For you guys, it's a guide because you need a guide to be able to budget. That's wise.
Yeah.
But for us, it comes to us and it will be a new look, and we'll see if that's a worthy year to do that, or we don't need to do that, or whatever we need to do. So, but continue. I just want to make sure.
Thank you. And I'll add to that too. One of the big unknowns each year is water consumption and water revenue. I mean, we've seen that the last 12 months, we've had a pretty large decrease in revenue, and we can see that the other way. We can see where revenue is higher than expected to, and that would play into each year's evaluation of the rate increase that's coming up. So that's the high-level recap. Again, we've talked a lot about this at previous meetings, but with that, I'll look for questions, and again, we're recommending approval of the resolution.
Before I go out to everybody, this is a public hearing. I'm going to open it up just to get that portion open, and then we'll come back. This is a public hearing. Anybody out there would like to share, speak? Now's your time. I see none. I'm going to close that back up, come back to our board. And who would like to begin? Please.
Mr. Chair, I wanted to follow in your footsteps. I was very pleased to see the proposal that you had, which was to anticipate potential increases. And we did this in a previous rate increase as well, but then have it up to the board whether to execute or implement your proposal. And also for you to reevaluate the proposal, given, wherever we are in the system, what's inflation look like, what are revenues looking like, what's the weather looking like, so that we can incorporate all of that in our decision-making. And I had a chance to talk to our director earlier, not today, but I mean, a couple months ago, and I really support this approach. I think it's wise. So thank you.
Yes, please. Ms. Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Mr. Bowman, thank you for all your work on this. And I know we've had extensive conversations as a board as to why these rate increases are needed, and why it's for really the sustainability of the future of TMWA. But if you could just outline a few of the larger, points for the community to understand, that would be very helpful. Additionally, all of the outreach that TMWA has done to ensure that community members we can hear their feedback, and we discussed that in our last meeting about all the great outreach that the team has done. That would be helpful. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, so, every year TMWA looks at a long-term forecast. We looked at 10 years. We started this process roughly last July. We worked in conjunction with Thomas Topfer and PFM, who's been TMWA's financial advisors for a number of years now. And we took actual TMWA costs and revenues and then projected out over the next 10 years and said, what do things look like? And what's really has hit us really hard is inflation. And I've talked a lot about that. And it's real. There are certain costs that are associated with operating the water system so that we have reliability, redundancy, and water quality that cannot be sacrificed. And that's very important. And so just to give you an idea, since 2017, inflation measured at is about 25% increase since 2017. Our rate increases since then have been about 13.5%. And so you can imagine we're just not keeping up with the cost of those systems. And one of our largest costs is electric power, which we've seen go up even more than that as well. And so we're playing catch up a little bit, and then that's something that we have to do again so that we do not sacrifice the quality of the water that we deliver, and that's obviously very important. As far as public outreach, we had 4 open houses across the TMWA service territory. They were lightly attended, but we did have some good conversations with those that came, and I think what I actually really enjoyed was that we got to spend a lot of time with the people there, and we could talk through with them what we're doing, why we're doing it. We could talk about everything from TMWA's historical debt position to where we're looking, where we're going forward, and what we've done to that debt over time. We obviously looked at inflation. We looked at what does the rate increase actually mean for customers, and there's a table in the staff report that shows the impact of what those rate increases might look like. We talked about the fact that there are folks in our customer base that are on a fixed income, and these kind of rate increases, they're felt by them, and we hear that. Another thing that we've considered and we talked about is what can we do for folks that might be struggling or have a low income, and there's programs out there, and one of the programs is WASAP, which is available for customers, and that program has contributed over $100,000 to TMWA's customers in the last year, and it's just been a phenomenal program. And so those types of things are available for customers, and we try to point them to those programs every time we can. But ultimately, these rate increases are needed for the reasons that I said. We have some specific measurements we look at debt service coverage ratio, minimum cash balance, and then maintaining our credit ratings, and those are important for TMWA. And those are goals that have been set by the board and we adhere to.
Thank you.
And Mr. Chair, if I may
Yes.
just add a few notes. So we also present to, and not to steal Andy Gebhardt's thunder, because he's going to talk about our Citizen Standing Advisory Committee, but Matt also presents to them a few times just on our finances and these rate increases, and the advisory committee recommended approval of them. And then just a side note on the program Matt mentioned, that's a federal program, the Low Income Water Assistance Program. We are actively within AWWA nationally lobbying Congress to continue to fund that.
Yeah, just to follow up, and I'm not sure if it's the same program, John, that you're speaking of, but You mentioned, is it WASA, WASA?
WASAP,
Yeah.
or it's
WASAP.
actually WSAP. Yeah,
WSAP.
Water Sewer Assistance Program. It's
Okay.
it's funded through LEWAP, another acronym,
Okay.
which is what John mentioned, the low income housing.
So that's what I wanted to know. Are the 100,000 that you mentioned that went to residents that get water from TMWA to help offset bills, is that a federal program then?
Yes.
Okay, so that's good to know, that, that if people are struggling to get to pay their water bill, they have this option based on their income.
Yes.
And is it, do you know about the application process or what's involved?
I don't know a lot about it. It seems like it's been relatively simple for customers to get on board with
Okay.
it because of the number of customers
I love to hear that.
that we've
Because
had.
some federal assistance programs are very cumbersome, paperwork heavy, lengthy. You got to file tax returns, all kind of statements, very lengthy forms. This sounds better. Okay, thank you.
So I just want to share, one, and you said it, and it's been said, but I think we can say it pretty poignantly. We are very concerned about our seniors and those on fixed incomes. Though inflation, we know touches everyone. There's not anybody in this room that's not like, oh, but it actually damages some people. Some of us can find ways to float through. Even if we had to get a second job, we can find a way to go do something. Some people cannot. And so I appreciate our focus on these kind of programs, and I do think that is the best answer, is making sure we do our best to support those. So if we hear of any others out there, any other kind of programs, we can help. And one question I do have is our staff, when they call in, and this might be to you, John, Mr. Zimmerman, are they a little bit versed in giving some answers on that, or can we make sure that's happening?
Yeah, and I can say certainly they are. Our call center, as well as the customer service reps in the Reno office, are very familiar with this program,
Okay.
and so that's the first thing that they would point a customer to if they're having a hard time.
Because there's not a board we serve on that has not had this conversation about our inflation, what we need to do as a board to make sure we can stay viable and thinking ahead. No one ever wants us to be broken, not with water in our community. So we have to do what we have to do. That's just a no-brainer on that. However, walking very slowly, gingerly, communicative in nature is important. So thank you. I think you did a great job. And I think you did a good job listening to us and letting us talk about this as we processed. So anybody else before we go ahead and make a motion? Looking for a motion? Okay, I'm looking for a motion.
Well, okay, I'll make a motion. It's not fun to make a motion on this, but I know it's needed, and we need to be responsible in managing both our water and our money. So I'll make a motion that we move forward with this rate increase as proposed by staff.
Second.
Do you need anything else read?
Just for clarification, you're moving to introduce the resolution.
Yes.
Right.
Resolution number 323.
Thank you. I'll rephrase. I'd like to move to adopt Resolution 323 to implement a series of rate increases, including, I can read it, 4.5%, 4%, and 3% in the Junes of 2024, 2025, 2026, with annual reviews as per TMWA's standard process and a policy of annually reviewing the need for rate increases thereafter based on CPI-U with a maximum of 4.5% and a minimum of 1%.
And Mr. Chair, I heard 3%, not 3.5%, so just clarification on that.
Okay. If I said 3%, I meant 3.5. Might have dropped off.
My second still in
Second,
place.
yes.
Any other discussion?
Yeah, I have just one thing. I just want to clarify because I thought this was a good thing we put in. We put in bookends, as I recall, so that there would be a minimum of a 1% increase, but it would not exceed 4.5%, even if CPI exceeded 4.5. An example recently was when we had a couple of years in there with 7% increase, 7.1. And that I was very concerned about, and this is what I've asked for, is that even though in a specific year, we might have a higher level of inflation, we don't go to that highest level. Right. And frankly, I've actually asked Reno to do the same thing, to not just follow CPI, but to kind of bookend it like you have. But it also means if the increase is less than 1%, we will do at least 1%, just to keep steady.
Yep.
Okay.
Councilwoman Pritz?
Yeah, as I discussed in the introduction, I'm a no on this, and I'm even to the time a harder no. I can support half, our practice of looking at them in 5-year increments, the 4.5, the 4, and the 3.5. But the float to CPI, even with the bookends, as my colleague said, is I'm strongly opposed to that. I think that, I think it's reactive to an inflationary era that many of us who are working right now have never seen before. Okay, so I think we jumped the gun a little bit off of what was really, in my view, the great charm of TMWA, is having a board that gets to a place to do a hard decision in 5-year increments. Now we just get to let it float with some conversation, each year we'll talk about it, but the action to do something is always a stronger call for leadership than the action to just let things float. And I've let things float and seen things float over in Reno for 12 years, and I think it leads to lazy budgeting and lazy leadership. Because you always know it's coming in. It's coming in even if it's just 1.5%. And, I think knowing the money is coming in like that, rather than putting us in a place to look through the CIP carefully, look through your quarterly reports, I think is not putting the board and the board putting themselves in a good job of doing the most important thing, which is managing the budgets. And I'll just give an example here, is this Spring Creek conversion we just had. That can, projects like that won't get a second look if the revenues, and maybe they should. Maybe, because we know the money is always coming in, we're going to hit the ratepayers, but maybe on a project like that or the next one like that, we should look at an isolated area and say, we've got to take other tools to bear on that, asking for a SAD or so on from the entity over there to fix that. So I think that it is really unfortunate to see this organization go in this way. I wish some of the founders of this organization were around so I could bounce some of their thoughts off of them, because I think there was a real good reason how they set things up here. And I hate to see us pivot this way, because I think it's been terrible at Reno.
Here's what I don't like. We're not here to put down anybody other. If you want to talk about this, that's fine. I don't want us to, I don't want us sitting here putting down another city.
Okay. I'm going to be cut off in my discussion. No, you did. I'm
done.
done.
I'm not into that, and you know that, so let's not do that.
Well, you said we're always concerned about seniors with fixed incomes.
I agree with
Okay? Well, not every household is getting a 1.5 to 4.5 each year. It may be inflationary out there in the economy, but I think a body that has ratepayers who are ultimately on the hook should be each year understanding what they're going through, and rather not have this autopilot come in, because then they can look at other aspects. Budget controls, okay?
And I think what
I'm
you're
done.
saying, I hear you, and I think we've heard you. I do want to, I'll end with, well, someone else can say something else as well, but I do want to correct something. I want to remind us that this will come to us no different. I've been on this board for a long time as well. And every year it comes to us, the only thing we're doing is allowing staff to have a guide for them. It's not a guide for us. So we will look at this just like every other time. We are very concerned. However, it is our responsibility to allow our board to look forward, and so I appreciate those who have stepped up. And with that said, I do hear the caution in Ms. Breckus. I will agree with this, that we cannot sit back and go on autopilot. But this board has never done that. I've served on this board a long time, and I think we do a fine job. And Ms. Breckus has been a part of that, doing a fine job. But again, for me, this is about TMWA. I do not like talking about other cities or other entities in this time. So with that said, if you're going to talk about this,
Well, I am going to say, other entities. You talked about other entities, right?
we are not here I don't come here and put my city
Yeah.
down. You don't come here and put your
No.
city down. I don't come here and put your city down. You don't come here and put my city down or county.
But I looked at case studies, okay? I looked at case studies, and if I had seen, the Journal of Utility Rates, there's some, professional journal that showed this is a big trend that jurisdictions are doing. It's going on across the country. Maybe I'd be okay. I didn't see any of that backup. Maybe I'll be completely disproven. Maybe this is the standard in rate studies. But I've seen it in one, I've seen it in another, and I have real problems about it.
I even shared that I actually agree with your concern. So please, you can walk away saying that, hey, they agreed. But how we do that matters to me. And so we're here to talk about this and what we're going to do. I think we've proven to our community, proven to those who pay this, that we do look at this very seriously. And I commend this board for the work we do. And with that said, if anybody wants to
I'll say one more thing.
please.
Yeah, first of all, it's 1%, not 1.5%, but I just wanted to find out, are we hands tied to do the 1%, or is that part of our conversation?
That would be part of every year's
So it could be
review.
zero.
Yep.
So we will have the conversation every year. You will bring it back to us, whether you feel like it or not, whether we feel like it or not, to do the hard work. And we could come up with a recommendation for zero
Yes.
increase.
Mr. Zimmerman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to reiterate something you mentioned as far as TMWA's internal practices will not change. Mr. Bowman will continue to do the same financial planning, same information for the board, and I can assure you that Danny Rotter and his engineering team will look at the CIP the same way they've looked in the past and really look at what projects we need to fund to keep the water system in the current state and keep it moving forward. Thanks.
Thank you. Well, I appreciate even a robust conversation. I think we've talked about this enough. We have a motion.
I made a
We have a
motion.
motion. We have a second on the table. We've had discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed.
It passes with Ms. Breckus opposing. Thank you so much, and good job, staff, for putting this together. We truly appreciate it. And I tell you, I do think you help us keep water at a place where it needs to be a priority. So, continuing here, we have a request for board adoption of updated administration instruction A11 leave policy with Jessica Atkinson. And Matt, are you joining us, or you want to run?
Did he run?
He's on the list. I don't know.
I think it's just if you guys had any questions, he could.
I'd rather hear from you anyway, so
Okay,
you're.
okay, my turn. For the record, Jessica Atkinson, HR Director. During the December 23 board meeting, the board adopted resolution number 322, which provided for the addition of sick leave to TMWA's management, professional, administrative, and technical staff, and the replacement of TMWA's current self-funded short-term disability plan with a fully insured disability plan that will actually be offered to all employees. So that happened in December. Following the adoption of that resolution, staffs worked to create updates to administrative policies A11, which deals with leave, and A12, which deals with family and medical leave. And so that's what's in front of you guys today. You have the final draft versions as well as the red line versions, so you can see the changes that were made. Really, the significant changes to these policies included renaming what was paid time off or PTO to vacation leave, and then placing a cap on that. Before, it didn't matter how many years of service. The revision now puts a cap at 25 years, which is equates to 244 hours, and then adding the provision for sick leave. I did, in the staff report, I kind of bulleted some of the key points about sick leave. You guys had a lot of feedback during that meeting. We wanted to make sure that that was incorporated. So upon implementation, this group of employees would receive a one-time credit of 120 hours, which is equal to 15 days of sick leave. And then from that point, they will begin to accrue sick leave at a rate of 4.6 and some change hours each biweekly pay period. There's no limit on the number of sick leave hours that can be carried over year to year. And then at time of separation, if an employee has greater than 10 years of service, when they leave, they can cash out up to 50% of any unused sick leave over 450 hours, up to a $25,000 maximum. And then sick leave can be used when an employee is unable to perform their duties because of their own personal or immediate family illness, injury. There's a list of things in there, and it also includes time to attend to doctor's appointments, preventative screenings, mental health, and counseling services, and that includes to attend with family members under our definition of immediate family. So speaking of definition of immediate family, to add more flexibility in the use of this time, which was something that we heard from the board in December, we did expand the definition of immediate family to include the third degree of consanguinity. Did not want to have to say that from the board, and affinity, which is really in line with what we're seeing across the board at other public entities, and that is it really from where TMWA was to where we are proposing in this draft. It's a huge expansion of that definition, so hopefully that will add more flexibility and the ability to use that. We also added language in the A11 leave that pertains to domestic violence leave. This came about as a result of Assembly Bill 163 during the last legislative session. It just provides guaranteed time if somebody did fall under that category, and so we added that in there. And then under the big change under A12, which is the family medical leave policy, is that we quantified that employees that were on FMLA would be using their available leave banks, but we allowed them to keep 80 hours and not exhaust that down, so that if they were out for a significant amount of time, say at the beginning of the year, and they had a vacation planned later in the year, they will not be required to exhaust everything. They would still have time to go on their vacation. So that was the big change in that second policy that is attached. So after all that, what staff's recommending is that the board adopt updated administrative policy A11 and A12 effective 4/1 of '24. And there's an additional recommendation that the board approve adoption of conforming changes throughout all of TMWA's administrative policies, where we're changing the language of PTO to vacation and sick
The
leave.
matches.
Yep. And with that, I'll take any questions you might have.
Any questions? I know we talked about this before, but I know it's been a little bit since we've seen it in front of us, so anybody, yes? Ms. Andrew.
Thanks for addressing some of the points that were made, so that's great. I was just wondering if, and I might have missed it, is there an indication of cost impact with this change?
So Matt and Sandra Tozy did do the financial on that, and that is why he was the second name on the staff report.
Okay, you can come back.
Hello, Matt Bowman, TMWA CFO for the record. Yes, so we modeled what this would look like. The impact financially is related to changes in the cash out provision, but we also limited the ability on the vacation side to continue to earn vacation. So there was a savings there. So offset over 20 years, it's a total of about $1 million impact in total. So pretty minimal on a year-to-year basis.
May I have a follow-up, please?
Sure.
I was wondering, based on the fact that there was an adjustment in terms of carryover with the maximum cap, and I know that you had mentioned in the past that there's been, a retirement, people are retiring, and I was just curious, like, how that factored in, because they may be set for retiring and then have a new implementation of a cap on the carryover. So I was just wondering how that, was addressed.
Yeah, so how we address that is if somebody at the time of implementation is over that cap, they would be frozen where they're at, so we wouldn't take anybody down.
So back to the financial impact, I wonder if that also was a factor in terms of what you just shared over the 20-year period. I just wanted to clarify
It
that
is.
point, because I think that that's an important distinction when you're having a new policy and then there is a cost impact, and even though you're putting a cap on it, that doesn't necessarily apply, and that's what I just heard. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Yes.
You're the expert on the finance, but I wanted to help put.
That's
a
exactly
point
right.
on-
And
Okay, thank you.
and to just clarify one thing, it's not a cap on the carryover, but it's a cap on what could be earned each year on the PTO side. Yeah, that there was a savings there in the projections because it limited that, so that offset it.
Good job. Ms. Breckus?
I hadn't heard about this domestic violence law, and I appreciate it going in there. It looks like a good law. I don't know if Reno's doing anything about this new law with our, internal city manager policies, but I presume everyone's required to put it into their policies?
So I couldn't for sure legally tell you that if that's the case or not. This fell under NRS 608, and there is a labor commissioner opinion that doesn't necessarily apply to public sector. However, we incorporated it because we do think that it is a good best practice, and we want to make it clear to
Okay.
individuals if they fell within that they would have guaranteed time off that they could take to attend to those duties.
Yeah, no, I think it seems like good public policy. It's such a devastating event. Do you think that, like, the human resources professionals are a little nervous about how to administer it? Do you think it's going to be tricky to administer?
I don't think it will be tricky to
Okay,
administer. I think, honestly, I think the biggest part will be the stigma around it and individuals coming forward to actually request the time.
Yeah.
But I don't think it will be tricky to.
Okay, great, thank you.
Anybody else? Very good. Appreciate your guys' both your information and truly walking through this. I think one of the things that, in a very real way, this becomes a win for our employees with a little limited cost to us, which those are things that we want to continue. If our staff are, all the staff that are listening online or whatever, we like those kind of things where it's better for them, and it might have a small dent to us, but it's something we can give and show the people working here that we respect them and we appreciate that. So with that said, I am looking for action on this particular item.
Mr. Chair, I'll move to adopt the updated leave policies as described in the staff report and authorize staff to make conforming changes throughout TMWA's administrative policies.
Commissioner Andriola, we have a first, we have a
I'll
second.
second.
Commissioner Hill, any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, any opposed? That passes unanimously. Very good. And I will agree, I think that is great that we did put that in there as well. It's actually something I'm gonna go back and visit our own city and ask the NRS 608. I don't know if we have that or not, but I think it's good. We have overview of TMWA Standing Advisory Committee, and this is an overview. We will not be voting on anything or anything, but we want to hear from this handsome man.
No, you don't. Hello, for the record, Andy Gephardt. Before you have a staff report, as a background, in the December meeting, there were some questions about the SAC, just kind of with the history of it, where it's come from. It started in 2003, and its design really is to help TMWA staff and help the board through financial matters and through essentially rate increases. It's used as a sounding board with staff. It offers advice and direction to give to the board. We give you their recommendations, and it has proven helpful through the years, and it's a collection of many different customer classes, from commercial to irrigation, residential. And so it's just kind of a collective voice of all of our customers and kind of feel out what they speak for the crowd, if you will, and look for some pitfalls and offer advice. So with that, I will take any questions you might have for it.
And one example would be what we just voted on. They were a big part of walking through that.
That is correct.
Very good. Questions? Yes, Ms. Andriola.
I'm just wondering, in terms of the categories of classes that you have represented, to your point about, really trying to take a snapshot of our community. And I'm wondering if there isn't maybe an opportunity, and I apologize, maybe there's been previous discussion that I wasn't aware of, that actually looked at having a senior representative. There is a senior advisory council in various jurisdictions, and I wonder if that might not be another opportunity to look at that population as well.
We do have the senior citizen.
Oh, I didn't see it.
Yeah, Robert Chambers.
Did I share that? I may have to go to get an eye. May I?
But it was such a
May
good
I put
idea.
that on the record? I'm
We're throwing
serious.
me for a
I
loop,
looked at
'cause I'm
this
like, I'm
so
pretty sure it's
carefully.
on there.
So let me go ahead and rephrase. Congratulations on having a senior citizen representative on this community.
Clara, I'm glad we were able to help you so quick.
That's the second time. I am going to have to get my glasses changed. Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? I think it's important we understand our advisory boards. I really do think it's a very important bridge into the community of knowing some of the things and unintended consequences of things that we think are great, that sometimes we find aren't so great. And so, thank you so much.
Yep.
I hear no other questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay, we're moving on to discussion and action confirming general manager appointment of Kelly McGlynn as a trustee to fill the remaining term of Juan Esparza to the 501c9 post-retirement medical plan and trust ending on December 31st, 2024. And Ms. Jessica Atkinson, one more time.
Excellent. For Jessica Atkinson, HR Director, for the record. This is an easy one. TMWA has two closed post-medical retirement trusts. The one that we're talking about today is the 501c9 trust. It's overseen by 4 trustees. 2 are from our REPT group, and 2 are from our management professional administrative and technical group. We have one of those individuals from that group that is retiring, and so this item is to confirm the appointment of his replacement. When we learned that Mr. Esparza was retiring and would not be serving as a trustee on this, we sent a email out to all eligible employees. We received 5 responses back of individuals that were interested, all very qualified. We did a random selection process, and Kelly McGlynn was the individual selected for that. And so the trust document requires that the board confirm that appointment. So that's what we're looking for, is to confirm the appointment of Principal Engineer Kelly McGlynn as a trustee to fill the remaining term of Juan Esparza through December 31st of 2024.
So she drew the short straw. Or the long straw, whatever you want to call it. Okay, well, very good. Any questions?
Move to confirm.
We have a first. Do I have a second? I do have a second. Any more discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Very good. So we move on, General Manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be brief. So I just wanted to highlight in the GM report, we are now at a savings of over $400,000 annually on our paperless billing effort. And so that's thanks to Marcy Westlake and Matt Bowman for spearheading that effort. That's huge for us. Also, we've received quite a few compliments on the PAFR. So thanks to Matt and his financial team and Robert and Cammie for putting that together. Those are great. We're also in the process of scheduling board member tours of Chalk Bluff. And so I know we have a few of you signed up, and we'll get everybody out there. And then lastly, I wanted to thank Mayor Sheevy and Mayor Lawson. I mentioned that low-income housing assistance program. They were both gracious enough to allow TMWA to let us put their name on a letter of support by a bunch of Western mayors in support of that program that went to Congress. So we appreciate that. And with that, that's it.
Very good. Any questions for General Manager? Okay, we're moving to board comments, and I just want to say it was brought up, and I don't think it's bad to continue to keep things in front of us. So if we could just have a little update on America Flats conversation that was asked, and I think I respect that very much. With that said, any other things for the board that we need to throw out there? Okay, that is done, and we are going on to adjournment. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Off to the optometrist.